I couldn't believe I was a homeowner at 29, standing before my dream house, a beautiful two-story Colonial complete with a wraparound porch. My name is Robin Mitchell, and I'd poured my heart and soul into achieving this. After 5 years as an investment manager at Sterling and Associates, I finally saved enough for a sizable down payment. "This is it, Derek," I whispered, squeezing my husband's hand as we lingered in the driveway. "What do you think?" Derek's brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "It's perfect, babe." "You did good." One of the many things I adored about Derek was his unwavering support for my career. He never seemed intimidated by my achievements. When I told him I planned to purchase the house with my own earnings and register it solely in my name, he didn't hesitate. "You earned it," he'd said simply. "Besides, I'm putting money aside for our future children's college fund. We're a team, right?" I remembered embracing him tightly that day, overwhelmed by gratitude for his understanding nature. Most men I knew would have objected to their wife buying a house independently, but not Derek. He taught high school, and while his salary wasn't comparable to mine, he never complained or displayed any jealousy. Moving day was filled with pure joy. The house was everything I'd envisioned: 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a spacious backyard perfect for future barbecues and children's birthday parties. I had insured a substantial down payment to keep the monthly mortgage manageable. My background in investment management instilled the importance of financial prudence. "You know what we should do?" Derek suggested as we unpacked boxes in the kitchen. "We should have dinner with my parents this weekend. They'll be thrilled to see pictures of the house." "That's a fantastic idea," I agreed, carefully unwrapping our wedding china. "We should visit my family, too." That evening, as Derek and I relaxed on our new porch swing, watching the sun dip below the horizon, everything felt idyllic. We discussed our plans for the house, how we'd decorate each room, where we'd plant a garden in the spring, and which bedroom would eventually become the nursery when we started our family. Later, as I lay in bed listening to Derek's rhythmic breathing, a profound sense of peace washed over me. I had realized my dream of home ownership. I had a devoted husband, and our future seemed brimming with potential. I drifted to sleep, content in the perfection of the moment. Our first dinner with Derek's parents was intended to be a casual celebration of our new home. Martha and George had always been welcoming and treated me like a daughter since Derek and I began dating 5 years prior. They resided in a modest ranch-style house across town, and Martha had prepared her renowned pot roast for the occasion. "So, tell us all about the house," Martha exclaimed, passing the mashed potatoes. Her gray hair was neatly arranged in its usual bun, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. I started to speak, but Derek interjected. "Actually, I wanted to surprise you guys," he said, his voice radiating pride. "I bought us this amazing house. 4 bedrooms, a beautiful backyard. You're going to love it when you see it." I almost choked on my water. Derek squeezed my hand under the table, his eyes silently urging me to remain silent. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile and said nothing. "Oh, Derek." Martha clasped her hands together. "That's wonderful. Isn't it wonderful, George?" George beamed at his son. "That's my boy. Always knew you'd do well for yourself." He turned to me. "You've got yourself quite a generous husband, Robin. Not many young men these days can afford a house like that." I nodded mechanically, pushing the food around my plate. The pot roast, which had smelled so appetizing moments before, now felt heavy in my stomach. The remainder of the dinner was a blur of fabrications, with Derek elaborating on how he'd saved for the down payment and his parents praising his fiscal responsibility. Meanwhile, I sat there feeling trapped in a strange, distorted reality. The drive home was silent until we pulled into our driveway, the driveway my money had paid for. "What the hell was that?" I demanded as soon as we were inside. Derek ran his hands through his dark hair, a nervous gesture I'd noticed early in our relationship. "I'm sorry, Robin. You know my dad. He's old-fashioned. He'd never understand a man living in a house his wife bought. It would ruin him, and my reputation." "Your reputation?" I was incredulous. "Please, Robin," he pleaded. "Can we just let people believe I bought the house? It doesn't harm anyone, and it simplifies things for everyone." I shook my head, bewildered by the absurdity of the situation. But looking at his pleading expression, I couldn't bring myself to argue. Fine, I sighed. Whatever makes you happy. A week later, we were at my parents' living room and the scene replayed itself. My mom and dad were present along with my younger sister Emma, who was visiting from her downtown apartment. Emma and I had always been close, despite our contrasting personalities. I was the pragmatic one who pursued finance, while she was the free spirit who drifted from job to job, searching for her calling. "We bought a house," Derek announced proudly. "Well, I did. Wanted to give Robin the home she deserves." I watched my family's reactions, a mixture of surprise and pride playing across their faces. It felt surreal, like a movie scene. Mom and Dad were beaming, showering Derek with praise for his supposed accomplishment. However, it was Emma's expression that caught my attention. She offered congratulations with a smile, but I knew my sister well enough to detect the flicker of envy in her eyes. She'd always yearned for the perfect house, the perfect life, and here I was, seemingly living her dream. 2 weeks after the family dinners, I hosted a housewarming party. I'd spent days preparing, arranging furniture, hanging artwork, and ensuring every room looked impeccable. The house was filled with the aroma of appetizers and the sound of laughter as our friends and family arrived. "Let me give you the grand tour," Derek announced, puffing out his chest like a proud peacock. "Wait until you see what I picked out for the master bathroom." I almost snorted into my wine glass. The master bathroom he was so proud of? I had chosen every tile, every fixture, even the luxurious rainfall showerhead he adored. Yet there he was, escorting our guests from room to room, boasting about his vision for the house and how diligently he'd worked to afford it all. The party was a success, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Derek and I worked during the day, returned to our beautiful home in the evenings, and spent weekends adding personal touches. Everything was perfect until precisely 6 months after the housewarming party. I was enjoying a peaceful Sunday afternoon when the doorbell rang. It was Emma, her mascara streaked across her cheeks, her shoulders trembling with sobs. "Emma, what's wrong?" I pulled her inside, genuinely concerned. My sister wasn't prone to emotional outbursts. "They cut my hours at work," she choked out, collapsing onto the couch. "I'm barely making part-time now. And my rent." She dissolved into another wave of tears. I sat beside her, rubbing her back as I had when we were children and she'd had a nightmare. "How bad is it?" "I can't afford my apartment anymore, Robin. I need a place to stay." She looked at me with those large brown eyes we'd inherited from our mother. "Can I stay here? Just until I get back on my feet?" I hesitated. "What about Mom and Dad's place?" "They have that spare room." "Their house is on the other side of town," Emma protested, wiping her eyes. "It would take me forever to get to work from there. Your place is perfect. It's close to everything, and you have all these empty bedrooms." "I don't know, Emma. Let me think about it." She nodded reluctantly, and I promised to call her later. Not 10 minutes after she left, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Robin," she said without preamble, "your sister just called me crying. You have to let her stay with you. She's family." That evening, I discussed it with Derek over dinner. "Emma needs a place to stay," I explained, pushing my pasta around my plate. "She's in a tough spot with work." "She should stay with us," Derek said immediately. "We have the room, and she's family. It'll be fun having her around." I looked at him, surprised. Derek had always gotten along with Emma, but I hadn't anticipated such enthusiasm for a houseguest. A few days later, Emma moved in. I helped her settle into one of the spare bedrooms, the one with the best morning light, which I'd planned to convert into a home office. The first few weeks were surprisingly pleasant. I'd come home from a long day at the investment firm to find dinner waiting. Not just takeout or simple pasta, but genuine home-cooked meals. The house was spotless, laundry was always done, and Emma seemed genuinely happy to help. Then, things began to shift. It was subtle at first, so subtle I questioned if I was imagining things. "Here's your coffee, Derek," Emma would say at breakfast, placing his mug down with a flourish. "Black with just a hint of sugar, exactly how you like it. Robin always makes it too sweet, doesn't she?" Or she'd be folding laundry and comment, "I noticed your shirts were always wrinkled before, Derek. A little extra care makes such a difference, don't you think?" I attempted to dismiss it, but the constant comparisons grated on my nerves. One evening, after a particularly pointed remark about how she'd finally organized the kitchen properly, I pulled her aside. "Emma, can we talk?" I asked, striving to maintain a level tone. "These comments are making me uncomfortable." She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "What comments?" "About being a better hostess, about how much better the house is since you moved in." Emma laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh my God, Robin, you're being so sensitive." "I'm just joking around. Don't tell me you're jealous of your little sister doing some housework." But it wasn't just the comments. 2 weeks later, I returned home from work to find Emma in the kitchen wearing next to nothing, a sheer tank top and tiny shorts. Derek was sitting at the counter, ostensibly working on his laptop, but his eyes kept straying towards Emma. "Emma!" I hissed, pulling her into the hallway. "What are you wearing?" "It's hot in here," she protested, but her smirk betrayed her true intentions. "Go change. Now." She rolled her eyes but complied, changing into her regular loungewear. Later that night, as Derek and I— "Don't you think you were a bit harsh with Emma earlier?" Derek asked as he climbed into bed. "She's just comfortable around family." I stared at him, incredulous. She was practically naked. "You're exaggerating. Besides, it's her home too now." His words struck me like a physical blow. Her home? When had that happened? The next morning, I confronted Emma over breakfast. "Have you started looking for apartments yet?" I asked pointedly. Her face crumpled instantly. "Robin, I'm trying, but I can barely save anything with my reduced hours. Everything's so expensive." "She doesn't have to move," Derek interjected, not looking up from his phone. "We've got plenty of room, and it's nice having her here. The three of us work well together." So I looked between my husband and my sister, him casually defending her presence in my house, her with that subtle smirk playing on her lips, and a chill ran down my spine. The Anderson deal was massive, potentially the biggest investment contract of my career. When my boss informed me I needed to fly to Phoenix to meet with them personally, I knew I had to succeed. "I'll be gone for 3 days," I told Derek and Emma over dinner the night before my flight. The negotiations might take a while. The meetings in Phoenix went even better than anticipated. Mr. Anderson was impressed with my presentation and agreed to all our terms without the usual drawn-out negotiations. By the end of the second day, we were signing contracts. "You've got quite a future ahead of you, Mrs. Mitchell," he said as we shook hands. "Sterling and Associates is lucky to have you." I called the airline and secured an earlier flight home. Derek would be so proud. This deal would result in a significant bonus, perhaps enough to pay off a substantial portion of the mortgage. The taxi dropped me off around 8 p.m. The lights were on upstairs, and I could see Derek's car in the driveway. I smiled, anticipating surprising them with the good news. I unlocked the front door quietly, my heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. There were wine glasses on the coffee table, 2 of them, and something that looked suspiciously like Emma's blouse draped over the banister. My stomach churned as I ascended the stairs. I could hear music playing softly from our bedroom, and hushed voices. I pushed the door open. Time seemed to freeze. The scene before me seared itself into my memory. Derek and Emma in our bed, entangled in the sheets I'd chosen when we first moved in. They were oblivious to my presence at first, too engrossed in each other. Then Emma saw me and smiled. Actually smiled. "Robin," Derek scrambled to cover himself. This isn't— I can explain." Emma stretched languidly and got out of bed, not bothering to cover herself. "Oh, don't bother explaining, Derek," she said, collecting her clothes from the floor. She was bound to find out eventually. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hands trembling. "How long?" My voice sounded strange and distant, even to my own ears. "A few weeks now," Emma replied casually, pulling on her clothes. "We're in love, aren't we, Derek?" Derek looked like he might vomit. "Oh, and there's one more thing," Emma added, her hand resting on her stomach. "I'm pregnant. Found out a few days ago." Derek's head snapped up, his face paling. Clearly, this was news to him as well. "Get out," I whispered, then louder. "Both of you, get out of my house." Emma laughed. Actually laughed. "Your house?" Oh, honey, I think you're confused. She turned to me with a venomous smile. This is Derek's house. He bought it, remember? You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. I stood there, staring at my sister as the reality crashed down. She had believed the lie all along. She thought she was stealing a wealthy man and his house. She had no clue that everything, every single thing around us, was mine. I couldn't help it. I started laughing. The sound bubbled up from deep inside, slightly hysterical but unstoppable. Emma's face twisted in confusion. What's so funny? You're being kicked out of your home and you're laughing? I wiped tears from my eyes, still chuckling. Oh, Emma, sweet, delusional Emma. This house, the one you think you're going to live in with my cheating husband, it's mine. Every brick, every tile, every piece of furniture. I bought it all. You're lying, Emma spat, but I could see doubt creeping into her eyes. The Mercedes Derek drives? Also mine. I bought it last year because he said his old car wasn't professional enough for a teacher. I turned to Derek. Tell her the truth. Derek seemed to shrink under Emma's furious gaze. It's true, he mumbled, staring at the floor. Everything belongs to Robin. I just told everyone I bought it because I wanted to look successful. The color drained from Emma's face. She grabbed one of our decorative pillows, the ones I'd spent hours selecting, and started hitting Derek with it. You liar! You pathetic, worthless liar! Both of you, stop! I said, my voice cutting through Emma's screams and Derek's attempts to defend himself. I'm done with this circus. You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out of my house. But Derek, he started. Don't worry about the divorce papers, I interrupted. I'll have them sent to your parents' house. Emma's demeanor shifted instantly. She stopped hitting Derek and stared at me, her eyes wide with instantly. The rage vanished, replaced by that manipulative sweetness I'd come to recognize. Robin, you can't kick me out. I'm your sister, your pregnant sister. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. I checked my watch. 55 minutes left. If you're not gone by then, I'm calling the police. I turned and walked downstairs to the kitchen, leaving them scrambling to gather their belongings. My hands were steady as I made myself a coffee with the high-end machine I'd purchased last Christmas. I sat at the kitchen island, sipping slowly, listening to the commotion upstairs. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Mom's name flashed on the screen. How dare you! She shrieked before I could even speak. Kicking your pregnant sister out onto the street! What kind of monster are you? She seduced my husband, I stated flatly. They've been having an affair for weeks, and when I caught them, she tried to kick me out of my house. There was a brief silence, then, well, maybe you should let them have the house. You're successful. You can afford to rent an apartment. Emma's pregnant now. She needs stability. It would be the kind thing to do. Letting them have the house? I sat there, stunned by my mother's words. I don't want to have this conversation, I said, my voice icy. In fact, I don't want to talk to you at all right now. I hung up before she could respond, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I barely recognized myself, but maybe that was a good thing. Maybe it was time to become someone new, someone stronger. The hour passed both quickly and agonizingly slowly. Doors slammed, drawers banged, and occasional sobs, presumably Emma's, echoed through the house. Finally, they appeared at the bottom of the stairs, each carrying bags. Emma's mascara was smeared, but her eyes were hard when she looked at me. You'll regret this, she spat venomously. You think you're so perfect with your big house and your fancy job? You'll end up alone and miserable. I didn't even bother responding. There was nothing left to say. I watched from the window as they loaded their bags into Emma's beat-up Corolla. As they drove away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I immediately turned off my phone, anticipating the onslaught of calls, texts, and family drama. I couldn't deal with any of it right then. When morning came, I turned my phone back on, wincing at the deluge of notifications. 37 missed calls, 62 text messages, voicemails from both sets of parents, from Emma, from Derek. I ignored them all and dialed my lawyer's number. Barbara, it's Robin Mitchell. I need to file for divorce. Barbara, bless her, didn't ask for details. Come by the office at 11 Tau. We'll get started. I called into work, explaining I needed a personal day. My boss was understanding. The Anderson deal had put me in his good graces. I spent 2 hours with Barbara going over the divorce proceedings, then headed home. I was fumbling with my keys at the front door when I heard voices behind me. I turned to find both sets of parents standing in my driveway. Mom and Dad looked furious while Martha was crying and George's face was red with anger. "How dare you throw them out?" Mom demanded as they followed me inside. "Your own sister, your husband." "You can't just kick a man out of his own house," George added. "The house he bought." I'd had enough. I walked to my home office, retrieved the folder of house documents I kept there, and returned to the living room. "Actually," I said, spreading the papers on the coffee table, "let me show you something interesting." They gathered around as I pointed to the documents. "Look at the buyer's name. Look at where the down payment came from. Look at who's on the mortgage." I watched their faces as realization dawned. This house, every penny came from me. The car Derek drives, also mine. He didn't pay for any of it. But he said," Martha stammered. "He lied," I said simply. "He told everyone he bought the house because he was too insecure to admit his wife was the breadwinner. He's been living off my success while pretending it was his own." "That lying little," George exploded, his face turning even redder. "I raised him better than this." After the in-laws left, Mom and Dad lingered. The documents were still spread across my coffee table, irrefutable proof of my ownership. But somehow, that didn't matter to them. "Robin, you need to be reasonable about this," Dad said, using his rational parent voice that I remembered from childhood arguments. "They're starting a family." "A family?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean my husband and my sister's betrayal baby?" "Don't be cruel," Mom snapped. "That's your niece or nephew you're talking about. Think about the child's future." I stood up, my patience finally exhausted. "Let me get this straight. My sister sleeps with my husband, tries to steal my house, and I'm supposed to just hand over everything I've worked for?" "You've always been selfish," Mom said, her voice trembling. "Always thinking about yourself. When you were little, you never shared your toys with Emma." "This isn't about toys, Mom. This is my life, my home, my marriage. They destroyed it." "If you don't help your sister," Dad interjected, "if you don't share what you have, we'll have no choice but to cut ties with you." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out." They left, Mom's parting words echoing in my ears. "You'll regret this. Your own family." I slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly swift. Despite Emma's constant prodding, I heard through mutual acquaintances, Derek never attempted to claim any of the property. He knew better. He'd seen the paperwork. He knew every asset was in my name. Fighting would only waste money he didn't have on legal fees he couldn't afford. I immersed myself in work, taking on more clients, closing bigger deals. The Anderson contract was just the beginning. I redecorated the house, erasing every trace of them. New furniture, new paint, new everything. The master bedroom where I'd found them became my home office. I couldn't sleep there anyway. Through social media, before I blocked them all, I observed their story unfold like a poorly written soap opera. They married in a small ceremony at my parents' house. Emma posted endless pregnancy updates, playing the role of the glowing mother-to-be. She never missed an opportunity to portray herself as the victim, dropping comments about toxic family members and selfish sisters who abandoned their pregnant sibling. The latest update, shared by a colleague who still followed her, showed her and Derek crammed into my old childhood bedroom at my parents' house. The caption read, "Making the best of things. While cruel people live in luxury, we have love, and that's what matters." I closed the tab without reading the comments. Let them play happy family in their borrowed bedroom. Let my parents coddle them and pretend their precious Emma did nothing wrong. Let them all live in their bubble of delusion. Me? I'm doing just fine. The house is peaceful now, filled only with my things, my choices, my life. Sometimes silence is better than toxic company, and sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need to keep.